The 2026 World Cup hasn't started yet. The stadiums aren't full. The opening match hasn't been played. And yet, some people are already warning that the biggest tournament in football history could be heading for chaos. Not because the football will be bad, not because fans aren't interested, and not because the event is in danger of being canceled. The concern is something far more complicated. Because for the first time in history, FIFA is attempting something on a scale the World Cup has never seen before. 48 teams, 3 host nations, 16 host cities, more than 100 matches, millions of traveling supporters, billions of viewers. Everything about World Cup 2026 is bigger, but bigger doesn't always mean easier. In fact, sometimes bigger creates entirely new problems. And as the tournament gets closer, many people are beginning to wonder whether FIFA has created a challenge so massive that nobody fully understands what comes next. Before we continue, subscribe if you want more deep-dive football documentaries as we follow every major story surrounding World Cup 2026. Because today's story may become one of the defining stories of the tournament itself. For years, FIFA's vision seemed simple. Expand the World Cup, include more nations, create more opportunities, make the tournament more global than ever before. On paper, it was a compelling idea. More countries would qualify. More supporters would feel represented. More people around the world would have a reason to care. The benefits were obvious. But every expansion comes with consequences. And some of those consequences are now beginning to emerge. The first challenge is scale. World Cup 2026 isn't simply larger than previous tournaments. It is dramatically larger. The event will stretch across the United States, Canada, and Mexico. Some host cities are separated by thousands of miles. Supporters may find themselves traveling enormous distances just to follow their teams. Teams themselves will face extensive travel schedules. Media organizations will face logistical challenges. Transportation systems will face unprecedented pressure. And suddenly, a tournament that looked exciting on paper begins looking incredibly complicated in reality. This is where the possibility of chaos begins. Not from one major problem, from dozens of smaller ones happening at the same time, because chaos rarely arrives all at once. It usually emerges when enough challenges start colliding. Travel delays, crowded transportation networks, accommodation shortages, scheduling complications, fan movement across multiple countries, operational pressure on host cities. Individually, each issue may seem manageable. Together, they create something much harder to control. And if you're finding this analysis valuable so far, consider leaving a like. It genuinely helps the channel continue producing these long-form football documentaries. Perhaps the biggest concern is that nobody has ever attempted a World Cup quite like this before. FIFA has organized tournaments across single nations. The organization has experience handling large-scale events. But World Cup 2026 represents something different. This is not simply an expansion. It is a transformation. Almost every aspect of the tournament is becoming larger and more complex simultaneously. More teams, more venues, more supporters, more travel, more logistics, more moving parts. And every additional moving part creates another opportunity for disruption. That doesn't mean disruption is inevitable, but it does mean the margin for error becomes smaller. One delayed transportation system can affect thousands of people. One logistical issue can create ripple effects across multiple cities. One unexpected challenge can quickly become a larger problem. That is the reality of managing events at this scale. The irony is that FIFA's biggest strength may also be creating its biggest challenge. The organization wants a more global tournament, a more inclusive tournament, a larger tournament. Those goals have helped make World Cup 2026 historic. But they have also created levels of complexity the competition has never faced before. And complexity is often where chaos begins. Not because people are incompetent, not because planning is inadequate, because large systems become increasingly difficult to predict. The more variables involved, the harder it becomes to anticipate every possible outcome. This is why some observers are becoming concerned, not because they expect disaster, because they recognize the scale of the challenge. Host cities must coordinate transportation for enormous crowds. Security teams must prepare for millions of visitors. Airports must handle surges in demand. Hotels must accommodate supporters arriving from around the world. Every system connected to the tournament will face pressure, a lot of pressure, and pressure reveals weaknesses. It always does. The question is whether those weaknesses remain small enough to manage, or whether they begin affecting the fan experience itself. Because ultimately, that is what matters most. The success of the World Cup isn't determined only by what happens on the pitch. It is determined by what supporters experience around it. Can fans travel smoothly? Can they move between cities efficiently? Can they enjoy the tournament without constant logistical frustrations? Can the event feel accessible despite its enormous scale? Those questions may prove just as important as the football itself. And they help explain why some people believe chaos could be lurking ahead. Not catastrophic chaos. Operational chaos. The kind that emerges when an event becomes so large that even small problems begin creating major consequences. Yet, there is another possibility. The possibility that FIFA successfully manages a challenge. The possibility that host cities adapt. The possibility that the tournament becomes a model for future global events. That outcome remains entirely possible. In fact, FIFA is counting on it. But uncertainty is exactly what makes this story fascinating. Because nobody truly knows what happens when football attempts something this ambitious. World Cup 2026 will be a test, not just of teams, not just of players, but of the tournament itself. A test of whether football's biggest competition can continue expanding without becoming too complicated to manage. And now, I genuinely like to hear your opinion. Do you think FIFA can successfully handle a World Cup of this size? Or do you believe the tournament is creating challenges that could lead to major problems? Let me know in the comments below, because by the time the first ball is kicked, the biggest question may not be who wins the trophy. It may be whether the largest World Cup ever created can handle the weight of its own ambition. And if it can't, the 2026 World Cup may be headed for chaos.